Hi, everybody. Welcome to the latest edition of our series looking at how we can do better work supporting learners with additional learning needs. This week, we are talking with the lovely Suze and Emma from the Better Health Generation um, around how we can get everybody on the same page. So, we have signed this lovely learner into training. Now, what, Emma?
I'll go from our personal perspective because obviously this is what we do.
Yeah.
We During onboarding the IAG stage, we have a tool that we use called Spencer, and that assesses the learners and profiles them to see if there is support need and needs they have. And what we do is we actually do an onboarding call with Spencer and ourselves and the training provider to make sure they're fully onboarded, so they understand the process. And the process is really that, we have this profiling tool. People that come out on the profiling tool as high to complex needs and needing support, it can be emotional support, it can be neurodiversity, it can be a wide breadth of support they might need. Is they come out with that need, then what happens is that the training provider will then refer them on to us at the Better Health Generation, where they will get one-to-one support through the Learning Support Fund. And this will happen every other week. And after each session, a report will be written by our clinicians. And sent to the delivery team so that they understand what is happening with that learner, what support we provided, what strategies we put in place, what we're working towards. All really important aspects for auditing process and drawing down funding, etc. All really key points. But I think the key importance it is that our team are clinical, so they are the learners get matched with the right person from the beginning, which is really important, because what we don't want to do is not confidence. We want the learners to build confidence and feel safe and secure in that environment with our team. And then we want them to understand that we're working closely with the delivery team, so that we've all got their best interests at heart, because we know that people who are nurtured, they do better, they want to do better. So it works holistically towards their education and apprenticeship. So in work, you'll see improvements. And I always say to people, like, we don't always work with the most, people that don't have like high needs, they're not all complex. And our job is not to fix people. We're there to get people closer to where they want to be. So we're not standing here and going, we're going to fix it. You've got anxiety, give us a couple of weeks and we're going to fix that. That's not going to happen. What we're going to do is to help you put strategies in place. So when you start to feel anxious, and your resilience levels are low, you will actually have a strategy to refer back to. And then you can come back to our clinician the next session and say, this worked, this didn't work. And then the clinician will work with that person to then get them closer to where they want to be. And it's all about keeping those lines of communication open with the delivery team, because they need to know what's going on and how they can support from their perspective. So these reports are great. We also have, the delivery team can call the clinicians at any time and book in meetings, so they can, understand what's going on with that learner and where extra support might be needed. For us, it's really imperative that we've got those communications with the training providers, and that's why we do an onboarding call to start with. So we onboard everybody, not just the learners, but we're also onboarding the delivery team, so they understand the needs and the positive outcomes of delivering Spencer through the Learning Support Fund and the one-to-one support that our team give at the Better Health
Yeah.
Generation.
So can I just reinforce a couple of messages there? Not every learner needs a better health generation, um,
Nope.
or a Spencer. Um,
Nope.
I think everyone should have to do Spencer before they start, because you then sort of get some of those learners that fall through the cracks. But not every learner needs a better health generation. There's a lot of stuff around learner support that can be done by delivery teams in-house with the
Yep.
right leadership support, in terms of certainly additional learning support needs rather than additional social support needs. So the Better Health Generation works very closely around where you don't have, and it is not cost effective to have clinicians and clinical psychologists and all of that stuff inside your
Which is
organization.
why we take on the high to complex,
That's it, right? It's the high to
complex, yeah,
complex stuff
support.
that is that really is sometimes overlooked
Mm.
because of the fact that it's not an internal thing. It is about drawing down funding that then is being externalized to support those individuals to achieve. It is not about drawing down funding to set up teams inside your business for people with less complex needs or people with additional learning needs. So Julia, how do you get the so as somebody who was an MD of a training provider where we did have a lot of learners with additional learning needs, how did you make sure the delivery staff were on board with that? Back in the day, what was your good practice like for additional learning
It
needs?
starts with initial assessment
Yeah,
and criteria setting. So, what does somebody who might have additional learning needs look like? What kind of things are we interested in? And there's no definitive right or wrong answer for that, but it is for the provider to decide at strategic level, um, what are the things where we've got a learner that we want to take into training. They meet all our other criteria, but it looks like they're going to have additional support needs. Now, that may be learners self-diagnosing and going, hi, I have this.
Yep.
that's it.
We're going to need to look at previous qualification levels. A lot of additional learning needs are around English and maths, and we're interested in it in terms of functional skills. So it's a pragmatic thing of, let's take a learner with dyslexia who has grade 5, grade 6, or grade C, GCSE, English and maths. They've come with these qualifications, but they have a diagnosed learning need. That's something where there may or may not be a need to draw down additional funding. This learner clearly is in control of how they learn well enough to have passed those GCSEs. We can question into and understand the additional support that they needed. We may have a report that we can draw on, or we would be saying in those circumstances, actually, this is where we want to carry out additional testing to see what ongoing impairment is likely to impact what we are delivering. And that's going to depend on the framework that they're going to be doing as to the level of embedded maths and English needed to pass that
Yeah,
apprenticeship or that qualification. Because, if it's something that doesn't really involve any maths, then if I've got an impairment around maths, it's not very exciting. It's not really holding me back. Same as if I'm dyslexic and I'm doing a very maths and STEM intensive program, my dyslexia may not impact at all because of the work that I'm heading off to do. So you've got to figure this stuff out ahead of time as to what's interesting and what's not interesting. And then you've got to figure out the stage 2 assessment that you need somebody to do in order to see what impact that impairment has on what you need to do with them. Same as with social need, you've got to be looking at, we always had there's 10 different criteria that fit into additional social needs, or there always used to be. And we said we were looking for significant impact in 2, maybe 3 areas to consider that somebody would have additional social needs sufficient to need to impact their training and to draw down funding. So again, it's having that system in place, training your staff as to what the things are that they're looking for, what constitutes an exciting level. Because, there's a difference between I'm going through a bad patch and I really am going through a bad patch that impacts my training.
yeah. So on that then, so this is the bit, right? So the question is for what we need to answer today is you've done all of that work, and that's a great summation of what needs to happen at the beginning of learning. At that point, the learner is signed, the ILP is done, the additional needs that have been identified through Spencer as an example, are on the ILP or through the initial assessment that's internal because they're not presenting with high complex needs, right? And that learner is now given to a tutor, maybe a support worker, maybe somebody else like a training account manager or whatever that looks like for that individual. Does the business then make sure that the delivery staff are able to deliver the additional support that is needed outside buying in, like for example, good practice to buy in the better health generation or whatever, but not including those high complex needs. How are they making sure that staff are doing the right things in the right way to support that learner to retain and learning?
Okay. Yeah. So if we're wanting to draw down additional funding, one of the criteria for drawing down additional funding is there has to be
Mm.
a plan of additionality. So
Yep.
you can't just say that the bog standard ILP that we filled in for everybody um, shows additionality. It doesn't unless you've got a section within that ILP that sets out what the plan is.
Yeah.
So what's the plan? You would hope the initial plan was discussed by the person doing the sign up with the learner and the employer based on that conversation that they've had. But then within your process, you need to be able to sense check that plan and make sure nobody went off on one. And either overcooked it or undercooked it or was talking about something completely irrelevant. So you need to have that checking in your process. Realistically, and we always used to have it, you want to be checking every start with your delivery staff. So we've got learners coming in, who is checking that and making sure that the delivery staff are clear and aware of what the requirements are. Additional needs learners need that more than anybody, but everybody needs that. Who have we got? Where are the gaps? What's going on? So that should be bog standard in your process. Every single learner in that first few weeks, looking over what we've got, checking, hold on a minute, I think there might be something going on there. We need to go back and ask some more questions. Or, yep, we're great. That plan you came up was epic. Love that plan. Let's go make that happen.
And I think as well, it's interesting, Emma, talking about, the interventions that you do with learners in providers, and then how does the business then integrate that into the learning plan in such a way that the delivery staff are really looking at the outcomes of the support that clinicians are giving to make sure that they are building those foundations and blocks underneath those strategies. Because I love the idea about, yeah, I remember when I started therapy, I thought I'd be in therapy for 6 weeks. 3.5 years later, I'm still seeing my clinical psychologist weekly. But it's all about building those blocks. And that's what the clinicians do. They don't fix you, they give you tools to
No,
support.
I always say to people sometimes though with the clinicians, although this isn't relatable to this really, is that it's maintenance sometimes, and sometimes you need that maintenance in order to function. And so it is a high need then, and it is it is a complex need. It's a bit like going for a run. Somebody will go for a run for their for their head or for the heart, to keep it healthy. What do you do to keep yourself maintained to a level in which you're happy with?
Oh,
You know,
absolutely.
so
Absolutely. And I think it's really worth just noting that when Spencer was built or designed, it's on its second iteration now, and there's stuff going on in the background around that. That was built with clinical psychologists
yes,
at
it was.
heart.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So it's a very much a functional mindset and well-being tool alongside everything else.
I
And
would, yeah, also be back to that. How do you coordinate? Standardization exercises, staff training are really important for this. A provider may only have one or two learners that need external support, but there's so much learning for everybody in what comes out of working with that particular learner and that external provider that then is relevant to all the other learners. So, we've got one or two learners that need to go to someone like the Better Health Generation. Great. We're getting all this information back. That's training, that's learnering. Um, and we can apply those techniques. Oh, so we're learning about that there. Well, let's go suggest it to that learner over there who doesn't have quite such severe needs. So if you are doing it through standardization, that's how you can use external providers to improve the skill and knowledge level of your entire staff team.
Yeah.
It's such a fabulous resource. But it's also around senior management, making sure that people are reading all of that stuff that comes back from that external provider, that it's not just paperwork to be filed for audit. And
Yeah.
isn't that lovely that we've got this paperwork? No, you've got really useful information that can help improve practice. So actually, let's engage in it. We haven't just parked that learner over there to solve a problem. We've invested for that learner, but we're getting all these additional benefits.
Which is why the Spencer tool is so unique and special, because we use it every 8 weeks to measure the distance traveled. So we
Yeah.
can ensure that it is having a positive impact, because that is what is required to draw down the funding, is to have that auditing process. So at any point we see that those barriers aren't being removed and the distance travel isn't there, then it's our job at the Better Health Generation and with the training providers to work closely to understand why that's not working, what changes need to be made.
Yeah. What
And,
needs to be.
that's why I go back to that communication being absolutely key. I've spoken to, training providers, and they said, it's great, the onboarding from, with other companies has been great, but we haven't got that communication. And that is where we come in. We want to communicate to the training providers, we want to help them. We need to see the distance traveled, not only because we need to see the impact that we're making, but also those learners, we've promised that we're going to help everybody in some way, whether it be a tiny smidgen or whether it's going to be a huge impact. That is our promise. We are there to help and support and give strategies and techniques to work forward. And they're not just for during their apprenticeship, they're for life, they're life skills.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
it's not just for then and there. And like you say, those the delivery team then they can see the impact, and they can see the importance, and they can then work with other learners who, like you say, are not as heavily impacted or aren't as complex, and use those strategies as well. So I think it is a win-win for all, to be honest. So and that's why the onboarding process with the delivery team it's absolutely key, because we need to have, at the Better Health Generation and Spencer, we need to have that relationship with the training providers and the delivery team. It all needs to be a wraparound, holistic approach.
That seems like an excellent place to end. If any of the content of this has resonated with you, then please use the contact details in our social media to get in touch. We would love to have a chat. Ladies, you've been magnificent. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye bye.